The United States is one of the world's innovators in science and healthcare. However, even with world-class facilities and some of the top pharmaceutical companies in the world, we still have a major problem.
Let's turn to the rising price of prescription drugs and outcries to do something about it.
Americans spend more on prescription drugs than anyone else in the entire world.
Huge price hikes over the past 5 years. Several brand name medications more than doubled in price.
Even as America continues to push the boundaries of medicine past the bleeding edge, many of our citizens cannot reap the benefits. This is primarily due to big pharma companies who unethically overprice drugs for profit and corporate greed. In the past 2 decades, the price of drugs has increased from 7% to 17% of all healthcare spending, and by 2020, spending is expected to reach $400 billion. The excessively high prices causes patients to severely compromise on their health, leading to more than 20% of new prescriptions going unfilled, including those for life-saving medication. One of the medications affected by the price hike has been insulin. Diabetes is one of the most prevalent conditions in the United States, with more than 100 million people living with it. According to the American Diabetes Association, the price of insulin has nearly tripled between 2000 and 2013, and has brought the total cost of diabetes up to $327 billion, making it the most expensive chronic disease in America. Insulin is 98 years old and should be available and accessible, and not have to force diabetes patients to do this.
Off we go.
They've decided it's worth the risk to go to one of Mexico's most dangerous cities, as insulin prices in the U.S. have more than doubled in recent years.
Prince Alex Smith couldn't afford the $1,300 a month to control his diabetes, so he tried rationing his insulin. Empty vials found near his body.
I lost him because of pharmaceutical greed.
Along with insulin, cancer drugs are some of the most expensive in the United States. The increase in cancer drug prices has had catastrophic effects on patients and the healthcare system. Patients die if they cannot afford the treatment or bear cancer's financial toxicity.
The fight to survive, unfortunately, comes down to money, and patients relying on one cancer drug are finding that out the hard way.
Although cancer drugs have always been synonymous with high costs, the prices for treatment have increased significantly in the past 15 years. For the year 2000, a year of treatment cost less than $10,000, but it increased to ranges between $30,000 and $50,000 only 5 years later. As a result, an estimated 10 to 20% of patients choose to compromise significantly on treatment or refuse it altogether. The rising prices can mainly be attributed to price gouging by big pharma companies to make profits. One of those companies is Mylan, the owner of the EpiPen, a life-saving drug used to treat severe allergic reactions with epinephrine. It was made in 1980 and has since skyrocketed in price more than 400%.
This week, EpiPen prices are increasing by 400% since 2008. In some instances, even more.
It's used to treat allergic reactions. Families literally rely on this.
Originally made by Merck Pharmaceuticals, the EpiPen was acquired by Mylan in 2007. Since it only made revenue of about $200 million at its time of purchase, Mylan CEO Heather Bresch came up with the idea of price gouging the 40-year-old drug for increased profits. Before Mylan's purchase of the EpiPen, a standard 2-pack cost almost $100. However, due to price gouging, the price of that 2-pack has soared to nearly $600, even though the essential components cost less than $4 to make.
When the pharmacist first told you the bill, did you think you must be wrong?
I did. I had her look it up again, and she didn't have to because she had answered that question many times with many other people who asked her the same question of, are you sure that the EpiPen is that expensive? And it is.
The outrage over the price hike prompted Congress to call on Bresch to testify.
We're charging too much at $600.
Sir, we believe it was a fair price, and we've just now lowered that price by half.
Why'd you lower it by half if you thought it was fair? If you thought it was fair, leave it where it's at.
You're doing every 4% of the market share.
Correct.
Yeah. I'd call that a stranglehold. I'd call that a lot of control. You don't want to call it control, don't. Because you have such a stranglehold on the market, you can do what you want in terms of pricing. And you have.
Mylan's monopoly over the auto-injector market makes it impossible for Americans to find cheaper alternatives. Companies like Teva have been blocked by the FDA from releasing their competing product, while Sanofi had to recall its EpiPen competitor. Other companies have also made less expensive alternatives, however, they have barely had an impact on the overall market. Mylan isn't the only one guilty of price gouging though. In fact, in the first 2 days of 2019, 60 companies raised the prices of 300 drugs. Big Pharma also games the system through patent abuse. Companies apply for an excessive number of patents to retain ownership of the drug for long periods of time and prevent cheaper generics from coming to market. They also have excuses for increasing prices, such as the high cost of research and development justifying high prices, and that lowering prices stifles innovation. However, the actual costs for R&D are much less than the reported $1 billion plus figure, and companies use research money to find new uses for existing drugs instead of new innovations. And lowering prices and allowing competition should only stimulate more innovation in the marketplace. Perhaps the biggest manipulation of the system is that Big Pharma can charge whatever they want for their drugs because the government doesn't regulate them. Some proposals to decrease the price of drugs include allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices, which could save Americans up to $30 billion in costs. Other legislation would bring transparency to how Big Pharma sets prices and would prevent tactics like patent abuse being used to monopolize the market. Additionally, streamlining the FDA's approval process for generics and allowing the importation of drugs from abroad have also been suggested. Cancer drugs such as imatinib and even non-cancer drugs cost significantly less in Canada and in Europe. However, members of Congress, including influential leaders like Mitch McConnell, receive more than $500,000 from pharmaceutical companies in lobbying, making government-directed reform difficult. There remains a lot to be done to level the playing field. Pharmaceutical companies have been given too much freedom to exploit American patients by unjustly pricing necessary drugs and using dubious tactics to kill competition and establish monopolies. If America wants to remain a global healthcare innovator, it should ensure that its own citizens have access to vital medications. Only through productive efforts by the government and accountability for drug companies can the monster of Big Pharma be defeated.